Thank you for joining us during quarantine. Um, I am really, really grateful that you're here. And we just called in. The students are also in their own spaces wherever they are able to call in from. And I had asked them for this week to watch season 3 of Undocumented Tale. And
Oh,
then just right now, I also sent them season 1, the first episode, and then I sent them the trailer just as a reminder. And then lastly, I was really excited to see the director's highlight for the Freedom for All video that you directed. And so I think all of them are wonderful and extremely powerful. And I wonder if you could just, say a little bit about yourself to start, and just so everybody knows, I am recording it. I want to make it available to students who can't make it and to our colegas in the department. So just so everybody knows, and if anybody has any issues with the recording, maybe you can just turn off your video if you prefer not to be recording. Okay, is that okay, Armando?
yeah, that's okay.
Awesome. So please share with us about yourself.
My name is Armando Ibanez, and I am from Acapulco, Guerrero, Mexico. I grew up in Acapulco most of my 18 years, until 18 years. We always lived in poverty with my family. I always tell people, like we were so poor that for me, coming to the US, I assumed that all undocumented immigrants were not all undocumented, all immigrants were as poor as me. But then I realized that we were like low, extreme poor. And for me, like we took my family were trying to look for ways to come to the US, but it's really hard because you actually had to find a sponsor. Someone can actually provide you money to come to the US. So we came to the US, my family first, and then me. And I was 18 years old when I came to this country. And I was very naive because in our culture, in the circles where I grew up, they it's normalized coming to the US. You don't realize the impact of coming to the US and living as an undocumented immigrant, right? Like you just want food and clothes and income. And so we came to the United States. And when I came to the United States, I feel my friends, family, even at school, I was told, like here in the US, like the only thing that you come to this country to do is to work and work and work, and don't tell anyone about your undocumented status, and don't get in trouble, and find a girl, you can get married and get papers. And for me, I didn't question that. Like I accepted it. I accepted that, and I started going to adult school, taking ESL classes, and then I started working in the restaurant industry. I remember my first job was McDonald's and back in the house. And at the same time that I was working in McDonald's, I was learning English. And as I was learning English, I was moving up in the restaurant positions. Like I went from dishwasher to cook to prep to cashier, even like chef manager. And I work in so many restaurants, but I was very unhappy because at the same time I was struggling with my identity, because in my mind I felt like I was gonna live in the closet my entire life, and I felt like I was gonna live being undocumented. I mean, living uh, as a closet undocumented immigrant my entire life. And I remember I spent more than 10 years living like that, like being very, very unhappy, working in restaurants, and I just couldn't accept it. There was something in me that just didn't make me feel like I was very depressed. I was having suicidal thoughts. I didn't see a point of being alive. And I remember until one day I went to work to a restaurant, and my manager said like, "Oh, we got a letter, and there's been an audit, and it says that your social security number is not correct. So you need to present your papers, your documents, so we can fix this. And at that point, the next day, I decided that I didn't want to go back to that work because I felt humiliated. I felt scared, but also I was tired. I felt like I couldn't put up with this no more. And at the same time, during that time, I remember a big movement of undocumented youth protesters were coming out on TV. They were protesting on the streets. They were yelling, "Undocumented and unafraid." And that completely changed my mind because I was like, who are these people? Like, are they really undocumented? Like, I want to meet them. I want to tell them that I'm here, I'm undocumented too. And I eventually started joining the protest, meeting all of these amazing people, and realized that many of them said they were queer and trans and bi. And that was just like, for me, that was the turning point in my entire life, because I was finally finding my place, my world, my voice. And for the first time, I was 30 years old, and for the first time, I was feeling like I belong somewhere. I belong somewhere, and this is my people. And when I realized that many of them were going to schools, were getting degrees, were following their dreams and goals and making a big impact in society, I was like, I want to be like them. I want to do something. And eventually, after a long struggle, I got accepted in community college, and I pursue filmmaking as my major, even though I wasn't sure how to do films. I was very insecure because I didn't know what to write about. I wanted to write stories about white people because in my mind, that's what I was taught. I was like, I'm gonna make it in the film industry if I write about white people. Like, nobody's going to watch films about myself. So it was until I started projects that represent me that I started changing my mind. I remember when I heard of this Broadway show called In the Heights by Lin-Manuel Miranda. I watched it, and I started searching on internet, and I was like, a Broadway show about like brown people who live in the barrio. Like, I couldn't describe what I was feeling inside. Now I know that that was representation, right? But I couldn't describe it. There was something in me that I was like, I just couldn't believe what I was watching. And then eventually I started watching a web series, The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl by Issa Rae on YouTube. I saw Mosquita y Mari by Aurora Guerrero. When I saw Mosquita y Mari, I was like, these girls are in Huntington Park? Like, there's a movie about, I just couldn't believe it because for me that was not acceptable. You know, that for me, like, making a movie about two girls who are discovering their identity, who are poor, who live in Huntington Park, that was just not acceptable for me. So all of these amazing artists opened my eyes, and they were telling me with their art, you can create whatever you want, like do whatever you want. And that's how 4 years ago, I was going through a big depression, and I started, like, besides receiving professional therapy, I was watching the web series of Issa Rae, The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl. And during that time, Viola Davis, the actress Viola Davis, won the Emmy Award. And she was making history because she was the first African American woman who won the lead category. And during her speech, she said, you cannot win Emmys for roles that are simply not there. And when she said that, I sat down in front of my computer and I started writing and writing and writing. And I only wrote 8 pages of the story of an undocumented queer immigrant Mexican who's 30 years old, who has an accent, like the total opposite of what mainstream media wants. And this character, I wanted to make sure that this character is not the typical good immigrant. He's confused, he's shy, he's trying to find his own world, his own voice. And I just wanted to let it out. I just wanted to let my story, my experiences, to let it out as a form of therapy. And then when I finally started making the episodes, the first season, 2 episodes, I realized that seeing those stories on the screen was healing for me. But then I also discovered that I was healing for others because people started sending messages from other cities, from other states, telling me like, I went through that, that happened to me, that is me, that character, oh my God, like I laugh so much. So I've been learning, I'm still learning about representation, about making an impact and creating change and being able to, but I think that the main key for me was that I have never been afraid to be vulnerable. And I feel like as an artist, in general, whatever art you want to do, music, poet, acting, um, you have to be 100% vulnerable. So that way you can like project all of the emotions out there. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, that was perfect, beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm every time I see you, every time I hear you speak, I'm incredibly inspired. And I just, even as I was getting ready for our conversation today, I was telling my partner Veronica, who I was like, I love him so much. I can't handle it. He's so amazing. And just I've been really inspired by the fact that you are obviously committed to like changing the world, and that you're doing it through your own story and through this craft that you've been able to attain in a way that I mean, it's almost like, who would have known you could have gained this kind of track, this journey from the beginning. And I just think it's really beautiful. How did you come to even like, so what was the role of community college, for example, in teaching you the craft? And what was the role of community? Because I know you have a lot of community who also helps you build the films and learn the craft. So can you tell us more about how that came to be?
Well, for me, first, uh, I didn't, when I started community college, I didn't qualify for AB 540, which is like the bill that allows undocumented status to go to college and universities in California. I didn't qualify because I didn't go to high school. I didn't have my high school transcripts from California. I only went to ESL, adult classes. So from starting, I still had, once in college, I already still had in mind that kind of like set of like, I don't even belong to the AB 540 community of students. I feel like I'm still struggling to trying to find my community within college. And then within the film program, within the film classes, I was also struggling because most of the professors used to teach you how to build a resume when you graduate, and eventually you're gonna apply for internships, studios, film programs, fellowships. But for me, I felt like I couldn't fit into that because I was like, I'm undocumented, like I don't qualify for anything. Like, how am I gonna like follow these instructions or these advices when like that doesn't apply to me? Like, there's no way I can follow that. Like, so my insecurity, my confusion about the journey was really hard because I was, even though I was going to school to get instructed, I still didn't know how I was gonna make it. I was still like struggling to like find my own path. And so for me, community college, I had to learn that I had to make my own path, my own journey. Um, and I felt like I started the YouTube web series when I was in college because I was like, I cannot be waiting for studios to come and hire me because that's never gonna happen. So I'm gonna make my own projects. I'm gonna make my own projects for my community, for YouTube, and then let's see what happens after, which happened a lot. I didn't expect that this project, Undocumented Tales, was gonna open a lot of doors for me. I just didn't, because when I launched season one, a lot of people criticized me because they said that the production value was really terrible, that the sound was bad, the camera was bad, the lighting and all of this. But I was so passionate about my story. The drive for me to tell my story was so big that those critiques did not affect me, not even 0.001% at all. Like, I just never listened to critics like that. I was always aware, and I always tell people like, criticize my writing, what I'm trying to put on the screen, criticize what I had control of. What I can control, that you can criticize, but don't criticize about like the budget or the production value, because that I have no control over that. I have no resources. So for me, community college was a different journey, but now um, I'm just seeing the platform that I've been giving to expand the message, right? Because even when I want to apply for grants, there's a lot of like guidelines or restrictions, like, oh, undocumented artists or filmmakers from 18 to 25 years old. And I'm like, I'm 38. Like, I started my journey when I was 30. Like, or like most of the grants that I've been finding, they're for DACA students. I am not beneficiary of DACA. So I'm always talking about these guidelines that in changes that people have the power to do, right? A lot of people don't know, but also I'm educating about like things that I can do on my own and things that I can tell institutions, funding organizations, like you can do these changes. Let's work together. Let's talk about it. But when it comes to like my community, I feel very blessed, so blessed, because the undocumented community, the undocumented queer community in LA, it's so big, so united. We're always supporting each other, trying to educate our people, the people who do not have access to education, do not have access to resources, or those resources are not visible. So I feel very, very blessed, because I feel like my undocumented queer community has helped me to have my voice and encourage me to be passionate and to step out of my comfort zone. I feel like I have encountered so many pioneers, unapologetic artists and activists, and I feel so blessed to be part of that community. Like living in LA, we are big, and that's what I want to portray in the series. I think I did a little bit more of that on season 3, and when we see the joy in the episodes, that is my community, my undocumented community, and I really want to touch a little bit more on that on future episodes.
Yeah. The other thing that before I let the students ask some questions, I wanted to ask you about when I get to see the season 3 premiere at the LGBT Center in Los Angeles. One of the questions that they asked you, or that you addressed in the Q&A, was how you saw this filmmaking as your activism, right? And I really liked how you spoke about coming into activism here in Los Angeles, and like the challenges that you face, and how this whole series is a response to that. So maybe you could share what you shared at during that process.
My journey in general, also, I always felt very, even coming out as undocumented and stepping into the activist world, instead of feeling empowered, I started feeling the opposite. I started feeling more insecure in terms of like stepping into the activist world. I realized that people spoke a language that I didn't know. And I didn't know what language that was. Now I know that was the academic language, and for me, asking questions, it was problematic. And then I was like, wait, so what's problematic? I didn't even know what problematic was. So for me, asking questions was like, at that time, it was very, very common to hear from people say, I'm not here to educate you, you can Google it. That was a thing. I think it's still a thing, but I feel like there are moments, there are events, and we have to be very careful with that. But for me, I was like, I want to learn. I'm barely coming out. Like, I want to be like all of you, but I'm not allowed to ask questions. Like, why? Like, and I felt like for me, I was very insecure, because I felt like I had the same vision and intentions than my own people, but I just couldn't feel like I could speak up, right? Then I learned that I didn't know anything about political science, sociology, and all of these new worlds that new words that I was barely learning. So for me, I was like, how can I talk about what I want to do, what I believe, how about my vision, but I do not know that language. Then I started writing, and I realized that my web series, my situations that my characters go through, that's me making statements without finding all of those words that I'm still educating myself about. So for me now, because I was very active around 8 years old, very active on the streets, protesting, people usually ask me, mostly my friends, like, oh, you're not on the streets protesting no more. And I'm not on the street protesting no more because Undocumented Tales is my activist, my world, my film, my videos, my content is the protest that I am doing. That is where my statements, uh, that's where my statements are, and that's where I'm like speaking up, without finding that language. I'm finding my own resources to say, this is what I believe. And through Undocumented Tales, I think the biggest message that I want to do is uh, to humanize our community, to humanize and to make them look like, we are like everyone else. Don't expect to have us 100 superpowers from us and be perfect examples of society, because that's not going to happen. We are humans like everyone else. So I've been learning that filmmaking has been the biggest tool that has empowered me to continue doing what I do.
Yes, that's absolutely powerful, I think, because those of us who are Chicano studies professors, like we come into this work because we say, like, we want to change the world, just like you, right? Like we want to, like, teach people about our communities. We want to create all of this change, but then, like, there are very few people who have access to the stuff that we produce, right? To the writing or to even the lectures that we offer. And even when they do have access to it, a lot of times people don't understand it, right? Like, it's like we purposely use a language that, that is considered academic jargon. And so for me as a professor, I've been doing this, for now 20 years at least. And so I ask myself, like, what is the most powerful way that I can create change? What are the ways that I can teach my classes to take these things, these ideas and these concepts, and make them, practice them out in the world. And so I think that your film series and all of the work that you do is that, right? That you're putting everything that we're trying to teach into practice through your filmmaking, through your talk, through just living your life the way that you live. And so I just want to thank you for that, because I think that's the ultimate goal, right? Like, for all of us to get there, to be able to share our stories, and for our stories to have the impact that they're having on other people's lives, like yours are. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
you. You're welcome. So I'll open it up to see if anybody has any questions. So I see several of y'all on here. Please feel free to ask a question.
I have a question. So I want to know if you can talk a little bit about your writing process, because that's something that I'm interested in, and it's always scary even to just start. So it'd be nice to hear from you about that, please.
Yeah, writing, I feel like I've been, I feel very blessed for being also in this country, because, like, there's a lot of resources. I have found screenwriting books in $1 bookstores that have helped me a lot. Like, I found a screenwriter's Bible that cost me $1, and that was my first screenwriting book that I bought like 10 years ago. So I feel like do not underestimate a lot of resources that you find around. For me, writing on Undocumented Tales, the first season was very I didn't follow any rules, any format, anything. I just wrote without rules, without thinking, without anything, just wrote and wrote. For season 2 and season 3, because I wanted to bring more characters and when I wanted to show a different range of different undocumented characters, I felt like I needed to come out with a strategy that many screenwriters do, especially for films or TV, which is, I hated math classes all the time, but I realized that writing a script, sometimes you have to use math. And usually, it's true, like every writer does that. Even like TV writers, when you go to their Instagram pages, you're gonna see that we use the flashcards, just to put them all over the wall. Because like there's no way that you're gonna write a 100 pages script remembering what happened in page 43, page 62, and then you have like 20 characters, 6 characters, and then you forget who said who did that, and this is what's gonna define the entire process. With this, you can move around, you can change, you can erase. And when you have the entire story ready, like you just put this into the script. But I think this is the main root, the brain of the script, Like once you have the beginning and the story in all of this, then you sit down and write. Because if you write without having this, it's gonna be a mess, a whole mess, because you're gonna have to go back to page 32, and then you're gonna be like, oh my God, where's my, and now there are a lot of softwares when you go into like that, they organize that, the softwares organize that for you, but I'm very, very old style, and I'm just this, and I'm currently writing season 4, and I also wrote a feature film that I'm editing, and I want to submit it to Sundance Lab, and that the same thing. For content, first I learned this from Oprah. On top of my flashcards, I write, what is your intention? So what is my intention with my feature film, with my script for DocuTel season 2, season 3? What is my intention? And then I break it down into episodes. And then on episode 1, what is my intention? Season 2, what is my intention? Episode 3, episode 4, episode 5, what is the intention? Is there an intention? Is there an impact? Is there something that I want the audience to live with in this episode, episode 1? So if the answer is no, I go back and write again. If the answer, I also ask myself, for example, on DocuTels, I ask myself, am I talking about a universal theme that affects people? Am I talking about a universal theme that affects on the undocumented community? Because we have, for DocuTels, my main question is that I want to break the good immigrant narrative, right? And the good immigrant narrative is that I speak English, I pay taxes, I'm a valedictorian, like I'm educated, like give me the papers. And so I want to break, because I want to break that. Every time I'm writing on each episode, I'm asking myself, do I represent the community? Do I represent people? Or am I perpetuating the good immigrant narrative? So that's very, very important for me. That's one of the main components that I'm asking myself every episode, every season. Am I breaking the narrative? Am I breaking, or am I perpetuating? So always asking yourself with whatever project that you want to write, small, short film, 10 pages, 20 pages, your intention. What is your intention? Just ask your question and answer that within a sentence. Like what? And I think that's gonna give you the start to write the project. No matter how many pages are, you can. For me also, like when I write, because Undocumented Tales is a small project, very independent, I always ask myself, when I write one scene, how much can I put into this scene within just like a few sentences? How many statements can I make within just this dialogue between these 3 friends? I ask myself that, and if the audience is gonna get it, if the audience is gonna ask themselves. So I'm always asking, so I'm breaking down within the parts, the seasons, the episodes, the scenes, the characters, and always asking myself if there's just a beginning and an ending. And I think the universal thing that everyone shows in writing, it's beginning, middle, and ending. And that's for me also too, the thing that I follow: beginning, middle, and ending. Set the problem and the struggle, and then the solution, even though there's no solution in DocuTales, because people ask me, when is the character going to have a happy ending? And for me, it's like, as long as we have, you know, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, there's not going to be happy ending in DocuTales at all. So, because there's a lot that we need to talk about. But yes, that's a little bit of my process. And also another thing that I want to tell, very important, people that have a job, that have a school, they tell me, how do I write? I don't have time. I don't have time, and I really want to write. And I have to work to pay the rent, and I have to, my writing, find your own, you know, because you hear of writers going to the mountains and renting this amazing cabin for 3 months, and they're drinking wine, and, you know, like they romanticize the writing process. We don't have those resources. For me, I brainstorm when I'm driving. If I'm driving to work, I'm brainstorming. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to write the next scene. And I get home. Sometimes I make notes on my phone. Sometimes I'm in the middle of a brunch and an idea just come out, and I just pull out my phone and I'm writing my notes. Like, I do not leave those moments to go away. So write, find your own ways, however you can do it. And find your own ways to do it. So just forget, because sometimes maybe the cabin thing for 3 months is not going to happen. So just find your own resources.
Thank you.
Those are awesome. Thank you, Armando. So I want to encourage, if anybody else has any other questions, to write them in the chat, and that way we can go to them. And in the meantime, I wanted to ask you, Armando, a little bit more. Araceli, I see you raise your hand. Thank you. You can use the raising your hand option as well. Before we go to Araceli's question, I was wondering how many pages or words create, like, for example, one episode? Have you figured that out? Like, how many pages you need to create one episode, and how long is your ideal episode? Because I know they varied in time. So what are the ideals?
Well, you know, what I love about Undocumented Tales is that every season increases in terms of like episodes and pages. And I always tell people that Undocumented Tales has been a film school for me, because I've been teaching myself and I've been learning myself. And the first episode, because I just wrote and wrote, we, in screenwriting, we don't really count words, but we do count pages. In season 1, the total was 23 pages for the 2 episodes. For the 2 episodes was only 23 pages. Season 2 was 110 pages, and that was 6 episodes. And average, it was around 18 pages each episode. And in season 3, in season 3, I was like, okay, I want to write for TV, so I gotta learn the craft. I gotta force myself to follow the recipe of writing for TV. So I forced myself to stay within 20 pages for each episode. But I wanted to make it 30, but I know that was not gonna be possible to shoot 30 pages. But I think that the formula is 30 pages per episode for TV, 30 or 60. So every page on screen is 1 minute. And even the format, when you write the format on script, it's in a way, I'm sure some of you have seen the screenplay, like it's the dialogue is breaking down like right in the middle. The format is designed so the format will make sure that each page it's 1 minute on screen. So if you write 30 pages, most likely your project is gonna be 30 minutes. So for sometimes when you write for TV or you wanna write a treatment, an idea, like they're asking you like, okay, do you have a pilot? And you already know the pilot should be either 30 minutes or 1 hour. So I think that that's, but for me, with on DocuTales, I also ask, okay, how can I put in 20 pages everything that I want to talk about? And it hurts because like for season 3, I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And I remember the first episode of season 3 was 40 pages. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to put 40 pages? How am I going to cut half of it that it's going to make the final cut? So it's hard sometimes because there's a lot that you want to talk about. So I also learned myself to edit. And to edit means that you're gonna have to take out things that they're gonna hurt because you want them to stay on the pages and on the screen. But sometimes you have to make decisions and say, okay, I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm gonna have to erase this, but save it. Whatever you write that doesn't make the cut, save it. Put it somewhere else because you're probably gonna use it somewhere else.
That's awesome. Thank you. I feel like you're teaching us right now. We're all going to become filmmakers. Araceli, do you want to ask your question?
Yes. Hello. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Profe, for connecting us. My question is, how did your family take it? Because I know sometimes it's hard to be queer, or it's hard to be bisexual or gay in Latinx families, or even just like our career paths. Filmmaking isn't really traditional for me. My parents told me that I should major in nursing because I'll always have a job. And so I did, but then I hated it. And I changed it to something where I like, which is English and writing and stuff like that. So how did your family take it, or how did you break it down to them? And
I feel like, when I first arrived to this country, I was told that I should start business in construction work, in how do you say, gardener, in painting houses, and I just didn't want to do any of that. And nothing wrong with that, but for me, my passion was always in films, in art. So for me to struggle and to prove my family, not only my family, but my friends, because I remember when I told my friends, I finally got accepted in college, and they were asking me, oh, what major? What were you gonna study for? And I used to tell them, filmmaking. And there was this silence. Nothing like, congratulations, that's amazing, that's great. I know what that silence meant. I know that meant like, really? Like, you're not gonna make it. Like, that's not for you, that's not for us, don't dream. Why do you waste your time? And I feel like that's it's been put in our minds, right, in our circles, because many of us come from poverty, when we are not allowed to dream big, to follow our goals. We don't have resources, we don't have access, we just want to survive. So our parents, I feel like our parents, families, friends, they're taking care of us, and they don't want us to get hurt in the process, because they think that we just don't have doors open for us, right, in whatever path that we want to choose. What they don't know is that we are about to open those doors, that we are the ones who are going to open those doors. They don't know that, and it's hard because when you don't have the support, like I didn't, it's really hard, because like you really want someone to tell you, hey, yes, you're going to do it. Go ahead, keep going. Like, and if you don't have it, it's really hard. That means that you're going to have to fight and work 10, 20 times harder than someone else, For me, every season, since I started my filmmaking career, has been amazing, but also I have seen how people have been changing their minds towards me. From like, I don't believe in you, like, don't waste your time, this is not for you, to like, I am proud of you, So, but the journey, it's been really hard. I would love to tell you that it's going to be easy, but I think that you have to be aware that you have to work hard. But as long as you really, really believe that you want to do this, like, I think not having the support, it's something that it's part of the process, like trying to prove people that you really want to do this, that you're committed to this. I think that having to prove that with actions, it's gonna give you a reward at the end.
And in terms of your queerness, how has your family responded to your queerness?
Well, on that, I feel like well, my mom is very religious, so it's been a process. But now she's at a point where like uh, she's totally fine. You know, she went to the premiere of Ducky Tales season 3. Season 1 she didn't want to watch it, and now season 3 like she was so excited about it. But also I feel like my mom went to the premiere of season 3, and she's been told at church, her religion, that like being queer, it's something that we choose, it's something that we can control, we can change. uh, I love the fact that she went to the premiere season 3 and she saw 250 people applauding a project about someone being unapologetically queer. So for me, it's like this the support of my people coming to the premiere saved me 100 conversations with my mom. That was a whole statement, because I'm sure she went home and she was like, why are they applauding this? This is so wrong. Like, why are they celebrating what my son is doing that I don't agree with? They just saved me so many conversations, because she went home and she's questioning things. She's questioning, and she's like, maybe what I've been taught at church is not everything correct. Like, why am I like doing this? So she has changed a lot. It's been a whole process. I came out, I think around 5 years. I came out to my mom, 5 years. But for me also, like, the way I take it is like I spent 30 years in the closet. Like, I cannot be wasting time. I need to catch up with my queerness. So I feel like I am very queer, and every day I try to be more queer, because I don't want to waste time. And I told my mom that, like, I have for 30 years, when I came out, I told my mom, for 30 years, I have done what you wanted, what my family wanted, what society wanted from me. I think I've been a very good son, brother, uh, and I think I'm gonna keep doing that, but now being myself. So all of my life, this line from Dakita season 3 is actually my line when I told my mom, I feel like I've been living in a prison and I don't want to do that anymore. So because of that, coming out to my mom just gave me the freedom to, like, I'm just gonna be queer and as much as I can, and I need to catch up because I feel like I already like spent so many years like not being myself. So that's a decision that I took because I know that many of my friends struggle because we have this big respect for our parents. We have this big respect for our parents. So even we come out, we don't want to like disturb the peace, right? If they're not okay with us, we don't want to disturb. So we avoid conversations, we avoid situations. And for me, I told my mom, I'm not going to avoid anything. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong. So I'm just gonna be myself. So if you ask me where were you last night, and I was with my boyfriend, I'm gonna tell you I was with my boyfriend, and we had so much fun. So yeah, so that's a decision that I took because I don't want it to deal with thinking that I was disrespecting her for being myself. And sometimes we think that. I think that our parents also, it's on both sides. So I'm glad that we have reached at a point that my mom is just like fine with it. Now we have conversations about me having a boyfriend, and like it's not too open, but she's getting there.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that, Araceli. And I just wanted to say, Armando, that, even though I think I've only known you for about a year or so, both on Facebook and now in person, but I have a lot of friends who are your friends. And some of them are in the series, but some of them are not in the series. And yet their stories are throughout your storytelling. And I think it's a really beautiful thing because for me, being queer, being an activist, being Chicana, mujerista, like, I don't get to see, people who represent my perspective or who are aligned with me, right? So it's not just that it's queer and Mexicano or Latino or Chicanx, Latinx, but it's like there's a mujerista, like feminist, social justice perspective that, again, like I feel like I don't get to see that. And not even in other queer Latino films or queer Latinx films that are coming out, like Vida, for example, or Gentefied, like I like Gentefied, but Gentefied still feels very infiltrated with a patriarchal narrative that I don't think your work does. And so I just feel like it's really powerful to have a queer feminist perspective. And again, I don't even know if you identify as a feminist or a mujerista, but I see your work very much in alignment with a mujerista politic. I wonder if you could talk about that.
It's very interesting that you said that because 70, we've been like watching the analytics from social media since we premiered season 3. Since December, we've been like keeping track of the analytics of the audience of Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And 70 to 80% of the audience in all of the pages, it's women. 80% of the people who support undocumented is women. And for me, like that gets me like really like, it makes me feel very blessed and fortunate because like when I was talking to the team, I mean, the producer, it's Carla Legaspi, the cinematographer is Silvia Lara, the assistant director is Denise. But when we were like planning season 3, I told them that since I grew up surrounded by women, right? And my mom had 8 sisters, and also I live with my aunt. And during that time, I lived with my aunt because my mom had to go to work. So I lived for like a few years with my aunt, and my aunt had 6 daughters. So I grew up always surrounded by women. I always wanted to play with women. I always wanted to play, with Barbies. I wanted to look at dresses, and I was not allowed to. Why? Because obviously we live in Mexico, like the uncles, the patriarchy, the machismo, society, everything was telling me that I was not allowed to explore anything, not anything that I wanted to do, right? When I was a kid, I was bullied my entire childhood and teenage years because I was very feminine. And even at home, I was always prohibited from playing with the girls. I was always prohibited from like playing with Barbies, even though like me hiding, I was like trying to do it. I was very bullied for being feminine. So for me, I feel like myself in real time, in my character, it's gonna be exploring that and discovering and going back to find himself in totally, because I feel like patriarchy and society and machismo took that away from me. So I'm claiming back that little by little. So, but I feel like that also, that it's something that I'm discovering, still discovering. And I feel like I try to put a little bit of that in the series, but we're gonna get to see a lot more of that in future series. And so I'm just excited that my character, it's discovering himself, and we're gonna see that because I'm still like trying to process, like that, like this Mexico for me was, I tell people like I have no good memories from Mexico. Like I wish I could tell like Mexico it's beautiful, and it's beautiful. We have a culture, a history, our people, but my memories are bad because like machismo took all the space in my memory drive. Machismo took all the space in my memory drive. So now I'm finally reclaiming everything that was taken away from me. So when it comes to the feminine queerness, we're gonna explore more of that in future seasons.
Awesome, thank you so much. Evaristo has been waiting patiently to ask a question, and it's 1:20 right now, and the class ends at 1:30. So I'll take this as a last question, and then after that, maybe you can share where we can find you on social media and also how we can support you. So Evaristo, can you ask your question?
Yes. Well, personally, like I loved watching your series. Thought it was like really, really good because like of the fact that like it's very real. Like that's like the biggest, like the best thing I could say about it. Like it's very real about like, and I like how you address like all like the patriarchy and like racism even within the LGBT community. How like in the queer community, how like I remember watching. I think it was on the first episode of season 3 where they're buying the hot dog and like they don't want to pay for it, and they're like, and I like the character saying like, "I'll pay for it," and then they're like, "How about you take like an English course and all that stuff?" And it's like, it seems like for the longest time, like in media, it's always portrayed like how like it's this sense of unity, like in the queer community, everyone's united and everyone is like, but due to the fact that, like there has been like racial structures and like patriarchy in society for so long, like it's just not going to be like that. So I was wondering like if you could like shedding light as to like maybe your experience with like racism or like patriarchy even in the queer community.
I think that's also another of the key components that I'm always asking myself when I'm writing, because like doesn't mean just because you're undocumented or you're queer doesn't mean that you're not transphobic or you're not anti-black or you're all of the intersections. So yes, that was intentionally because when I was writing, I always asked myself about like, we gotta come together. And for me, putting those, like the hot dog scene, telling people like, like sometimes we are wrong within our community. Season 4, I'm definitely gonna talk about the anti-blackness that there is in the Latinx community. And the Latinx community includes documented and undocumented people. So for me, it's addressing the problems that is stopping us from creating bigger changes and impact. And one of the problems is that we have a lot of anti-blackness that we don't know. Many, like many of our parents, neighbors, señoras, like I've been there, I have worked with them for many years. Like we have this anti-blackness because we have been taught that, right? So that's one of the main components that we're gonna see in season 4 that I'm so excited because I haven't seen it on screen and we need to address it. For my part, I feel like I have encountered so many interactions when it comes to racism and homophobia. And sometimes I address this in funny ways, docutels. In funny ways, I think there's only one incident in season 2 when a coworker comes to me and she yells at me. But other than that, I feel like I've been learning that through comedy, you can address so many issues of like homophobia, racism. So I'm gonna continue talking about that, but most of the incidents that we see in the seasons have happened to me. I think one of the most identifiable incidents is when I work as a server. When I work as a server and people, mostly white people, come to me and they talk in a way they don't realize that they're being racist. Sometimes I have seen how people talk to others just because they're brown, but they don't speak Spanish, they talk to them in Spanish, like that is racism. Just white people going to Mexican restaurants and thinking that they can talk in Spanish to anyone without realizing if they speak Spanish or not. There has been so many incidents that I just cannot wait for Netflix to buy my show so I can make it like an hour long and talk about all of these experiences. But I think that's been, when me working as a server, I was very upset all the time for witnessing this. I was always upset for witnessing these things that I know that were wrong. I didn't know how to describe them. So me putting them on docutels is like I'm addressing these issues. And this is how I can explain to people why it's wrong, just putting them on the screen. So I'm gonna continue doing that, addressing all of these issues, mostly through comedy.
Awesome. And I think Vanessa wants to ask one more question, so we'll take this one as the last one.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for coming in and like taking the time to talk to us. So my question is kind of long, and I wrote it down. So I am asking if there's one thing I learned about social justice in this class is that it requires unity. I wanted to ask a question about the caravans and migrants from South America and Central America and the struggles they face for support and acceptance from some people in Mexico and Mexican people in the US, mostly from people who are documented. Have you ever thought to address this in your work?
Yes, yes, I have thought about it a lot. I want to write, to be honest, I've been thinking about writing a feature film about the caravan, but focusing again on the queer community, you know?
Mhm.
There has been so many reports that the transgender community in the caravan, they had to abandon the caravans because of the transphobia that within the caravans, right? So I do want to talk about it. There are two projects that I really want to make. I want to make a documentary about all the people who did not make it, and unfortunately, they stayed in their trying to cross the border. And we have an average of 150 people per year that die trying to cross the border. I want to make a documentary about that. And I want to make a documentary about the queer community trying to come into the US, specifically with the queer community. Right now, I just finished editing, producing a short documentary called Before and After Detention that follows the journey of three trans women, one from Mexico, one from Guatemala, and one from El Salvador, who come to this country and they realize that after like making it, they're still struggling because of the transphobia that exists. That is one project that we're gonna premiere this year, and it's gonna be premiered on the DocuTell's YouTube eventually this year, later this year. So we're gonna launch it on the YouTube channel. So subscribe so you can watch it. But right now we are submitting it to film festivals, and we're gonna make community screenings. But I do want to talk about the caravan and how it affects through my work, one through the feature film and documentary that I want to make. I feel like that's the best way that I can create an impact, you know? And also like filmmaking reaches bigger audience, not only, you know, like it reaches all type of audiences and everyone can have access to it. So I do want to make a documentary eventually about the caravan, about the queer community who have a different struggle because of the transphobia and homophobia that we have within here, Mexico, and all of our countries.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Vanessa, for asking. And I just want to thank Armando a million times for taking the time. I know that we are in a state of global crisis, and like I know that it's having an impact on all of us. And I just want to, share my gratitude, and I want to let folks know who are like calling in. I know that we only have, I think we have 35 to 40 students in the class, and there are 54 people on here. And I know that several of my colegas have asked to see if they could share the recording with their students. So I'm going to offer them the opportunity, but I also want to ask anybody, especially the faculty who have the access and privilege to send you donations. I think your Venmo is at Undocutel, is that correct?
Yes, I'm typing it right now. Venmo, yes. There, that's Venmo. Oh, I think I put it.
Okay.
But yes, on DocuTels is Venmo. Thank you so much for your support. Spread the message. Like also open to like comments. You can write to the website or the social media pages, and we can answer any other questions if you still have more questions about it. And thank you so much for the support. Just take care. Stay safe, please. Stay safe.
Yes.
Don't go out, okay? Don't go out if you have the choice. You have the choice, please. We want this to be over soon. I'm sure we all want it. So we gotta take care of ourselves and do our little part. Difficult times that we are living, that we're struggling to, but don't give up. Don't give up, please, because like we need you, all of you.
Gracias, Armando. And where can we find you on social media? Can you tell us?
For Undocutel's, all social media, it's Undocumented Tells. Only Twitter is Undocutel's, and And for Instagram, you can find me as Armando Ibanez, or my handle name is El Peor del Mundo. El Peor del Mundo. And let me put it right here. And Facebook, Armando Ibanez too, and Undocumented Tales or UndocuTales. Actually, if you Google UndocuTales or Undocumented Tales, it will give you all the pages. And thank you so much for everyone for the support. Share the project. That's the best support that you can give me. Sharing the project with everyone.
Awesome, awesome. We will share it, and please have your family members watch it. It's like a novela. You know, my mom's a novelera, so I know that she has enjoyed watching the episodes. So I think it's something that you can share with your family. Thank you so much for coming, and
thank you.
I'll say goodbye now. If anybody wants to stay on and talk to me afterwards, you're welcome to stay on. Bye, Armando.
Bye. Bye.
Cuídate. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.